Hey, we're live. Okay, so we're live on YouTube and Facebook. So thank you guys for tuning in today. My name is Michael Music, and I'm gonna be reading Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Truly one of the most inspirational books in the sense that it has created more millionaires. I don't know if this is 100% a fact, but I think this book has created more millionaires than any other book out there. And so I was like, why not read it and even read it out loud, especially on live, so that I can actually understand what's going on in this book because I've been studying this book since I was 19. So it's been 3 years now. And it hits different. It hits different when you read it out loud. I will say that. So I've been reading it out loud for 14 episodes now. And with that being said, I'm going to continue on. Today, I want to talk about the power of the mastermind principle. I've been blessed. I actually have gotten a really cool mastermind alliance with some pretty neat individuals. And that's what inspired me to start reading this book, Think and Grow Rich. And I'm excited to teach you guys about this because this is 100% a necessary step. As I've been reading it live, I've noticed that Napoleon Hill actually brings up the power of the mastermind principle continuously through many of the chapters, including persistence and autosuggestion. Um, so this is definitely key to understand having your mastermind. And so as we're reading, I want you guys to think about where can you start with a mastermind. So just keep in mind what the definition of a mastermind is. I'll tell you it right now. It's when two minds come together and invariably they actually create a third mind. We'll dive deeper into that, but just think about as I'm reading this, who you can possibly start a mastermind with, who you would like to start a mastermind with, and what would that mastermind really look like. Keep those questions in mind as I read through this. I'm gonna get started, and as we go through the book, I'll just bring up some ideas that come to mind. This is a pretty short chapter. I think it's only 10 pages, 11, 12, give or take. So it should take me about 15 minutes to read it, and then I'll spend some time like in between talking about questions or anything that comes to mind. So with that being said, chapter 10, Power of the Mastermind, the driving force, the ninth step towards riches. Okay, he starts with this word. It's called power is essential for success in the accumulation of money. Power is essential for success in the accumulation of money. So, what is power? What does he mean by power? Plans are inert and useless without sufficient power to translate them into action. This chapter will describe the method by which an individual may attain and apply power. Okay, so we're talking about power right now. And that's interesting. My mentor, Sean, would say, I'm not here to give you strength because you already have so much strength. I'm here to give you power. And this one word power, it's like what do you mean like power? What is that? I hope that hopefully we can get that answered right now. Okay, so we can. Power may be defined as organized and intelligently directed knowledge. Power, as the term here used, refers to organized effort sufficient to enable an individual to transmute desire into its monetary equivalent. Okay, I'm going to repeat that again. Power, as the term is here used, refers to organized effort sufficient to enable an individual to transmute desire into its monetary equivalent. Organized effort is produced through the coordination of effort of two or more people who work towards a definite end in a spirit of harmony. Power is required for the accumulation of money. Okay, so as I go through this chapter, just keep in mind the definition of power because this first page, it seemed like every bullet point he was talking about power and like what is power? And he defines it as organized and intelligently directed knowledge. So if anything comes up, even if you read this chapter, go on about your day, just think about what is power to you What does it mean to have organized and intelligently directed knowledge? And what does that look like in terms of a plan and action? Napoleon Hill states that power is necessary for the retention of money after it has been accumulated. Let us ascertain how power may be acquired. If power is organized knowledge, let us examine the sources of knowledge. A. Infinite intelligence. This source of knowledge may be contacted through the procedure described in another chapter with the aid of a creative imagination. So, if you want to contact infinite intelligence or God or whatever you may call it, go back to the chapter on imagination. It'll talk about the creative imagination. That's how you receive thoughts from infinite intelligence. And also the chapter later on that I haven't touched on yet. It's called The Sixth Sense. Stay tuned for that chapter because the Sixth Sense and the creative imagination, to my understanding, are the same thing as Napoleon Hill is putting it, and that's the way that you actually communicate with infinite intelligence. B. Accumulated experience. The accumulated experience of man, or that portion of it which has been organized and recorded, may be found in any well equipped public library. An important part of this accumulated experience is taught in public schools and colleges, where it has been classified and organized. All right, I'm just going to say this. So, a lot of people don't really take advantage of the libraries, and I can't say I do myself. One thing I will say is the book library. I wish I could pull up my book library on my phone right now. I gotta on Apple Books. I have maxed that out to like my like as much as I can. Basically, I would every time I hear a book, I'd search it up on Apple Books. I just type in the book and I'd immediately get a sample of it so that I have that book in my library. And eventually, I'd either download it for free on the internet through LibGen, which I'm not, I'll put out there later, or I will just buy it on Apple Books. But I always, every time I hear a book idea, I search it up on Apple Books, put it in my library, and now I have a library of 300 books. So I've read like 100 of them, and I used to think that reading a ton of books would get you rich. So I read 100 books, did not get rich. And that's why now I'm like, okay, might as well just study one, teach it, and keep studying it over and over and over again because I learned through just the fact that I read so many books that reading books does not work. Anyways, going back to the sources of knowledge, we're on C now. Experiment and research. In the field of science and in practically every other walk of life, men are gathering and classifying and organizing new facts daily. This is the source to which one must turn when knowledge is not available through accumulated experience. Here, too, the creative imagination must be used. So that was C, experiment and research. So just A, B, and C real quick. A, infinite intelligence. B, accumulated experience. And C, experiment and research. Those are three sources of knowledge. Knowledge may be acquired from any of the foregoing sources. It may be converted into power by organizing it into definite plans and by expressing those plans in terms of action. So we just went over the three sources of knowledge: infinite intelligence, accumulated experience, and experiment and research. And if you want to convert this into power, you're going to want to organize these sources of knowledge into definite plans and express those plans in terms of action. That's what Napoleon Hill is saying here. That hits differently now that I'm saying that out loud. Okay, examination of the three major sources of knowledge will readily disclose the difficulty as an individual would have if he depended on upon his efforts alone in assembling knowledge and expressing it through definite plans and in terms of action. Uh, Examination of the three major sources of knowledge will readily disclose the difficulty an individual would have if he depended upon his efforts alone in assembling knowledge and expressing it through definite plans in terms of action. If his plans are comprehensive and if they contemplate large proportions, he must generally induce others to cooperate with him before he can inject into them the necessary element of power. So I have that last line underlined, but I didn't quite understand it yet. I'm going to repeat it. If his plans are comprehensive and if they contemplate large proportions, he must generally induce others to cooperate with him before he can inject into them the necessary element of power. Okay, so if you got plans and they make sense and they're good plans, you want other people to cooperate with you, and this is where we're going to get into developing a mastermind, and that's going to be where this power really gets into play. So gaining power through the mastermind. We're on page 245. The mastermind may be defined as coordination of knowledge and effort in a spirit of harmony between two or more people for the attainment of a definite purpose. I'll repeat that. So it says, Napoleon Hill says, the mastermind may be defined as the coordination of knowledge and effort in a spirit of harmony between two or more people for the attainment of a definite purpose. No individual may have great power without availing himself of the mastermind. Napoleon Hill is basically saying if you really do want power, which we defined earlier as organized and intelligently directed knowledge, if you want true power, you're going to want to really think about setting up your mastermind. In the preceding chapter, instructions were given for the creation of plans for the purpose of translating desire into its monetary equivalent. If you carry out these instructions with persistence and intelligence and use discrimination in the selection of your mastermind group, your objective will have been halfway reached even before you begin to recognize it. What is the author saying here? Is he saying that once you really set up your mastermind group, you have a definite purpose in place, your objective is already halfway reached? That's interesting. So you may better understand the intangible potentialities of power available to you through a properly chosen mastermind group. We will here explain the two characteristics of the mastermind principle, one of which is economic in nature and the other is psychic. The economic feature is obvious. Economic advantages may be created by any person who surrounds himself with the advice, counsel, and personal cooperation of a group of men who are willing to lend him wholehearted aid in a spirit of perfect harmony. Okay, so economic advantages, obviously, you got you got your economic advantages through just understanding. Like, let's say you set up a mastermind with people who have wealth in areas of life. Like, you got some economic advantages there from the mastermind. Now, the psychic phase of the mastermind principle is much more abstract, much more difficult to comprehend because it has reference to the spiritual forces with which the human race as a whole is not well acquainted. You may catch a significant suggestion from this statement. No two minds ever come together without thereby creating a third, invisible, intangible force which may be likened to a third mind. So no two minds ever come together without thereby creating a third invisible, intangible force which may be likened to a third mind. Keep in mind the fact that there are only two known elements in the whole universe, energy and matter. It is a well known fact that matter may be broken down into units of molecules, atoms, and electrons. There are units of matter which may be isolated, separated, and analyzed. Likewise, there are units of energy. The human mind is a form of energy, a part of it being spiritual in nature. When the minds of two people are coordinated in a spirit of harmony, the spiritual units of energy of each mind form an affinity, which constitutes the psychic phase of the master mind. Okay, I'm going to pause there and I really want to ask you questions about it. So, what is Napoleon Hill saying when two minds come together? He is saying that anytime that two minds come together, there's a third invisible mind that is technically equivalent to a third mind. And that's so interesting to really think about it, because we don't know what the mind looks like. No one has ever seen the mind. I know there's images of the stick person describing the mind, but truthfully, in real life, you can't see the mind because it's energy. It's not physical. It's still in that energy form. Remember, Napoleon Hill says there's only two forms of elements in the whole universe. That's energy and matter. And so the mind is energy. So you can't exactly see it, but just use your imagination that when two minds come together, there's this third invisible mind. And that's what anyone you come across, it doesn't matter who. It could be your brother, your sibling. Anytime you talk to them, there'll be this third mind that you create. And every time you come back to that conversation, it's like you pick up where you left off almost. I guess the best way to put it is, have you ever been away from a friend for so long, and then you see them, like, let's say after plenty of years, and it's like you've never been really gone. And that's probably the best way to just think about this third invisible mind that's created. Um, okay, so I'm just talking about invisible stuff right now. So let's get back to the book and see what's the importance of creating this third mind. The human mind is a form of energy, a part of it being spiritual in nature. When the minds of two people are coordinated in a spirit of harmony, the spiritual units of energy of each mind form an affinity, which constitutes the psychic phase of the mastermind. The mastermind principle, or rather the economic feature of it, was first called to my attention by Andrew Carnegie over 25 years ago. Discovery of this principle was responsible for the choice of my life's work. Mr. Carnegie's mastermind group consisted of a staff of approximately 50 men with whom he surrounded himself for the definite purpose of manufacturing and marketing steel. He attributed his entire fortune to the power he accumulated through this mastermind. Analyze the record of any man who has accumulated a great fortune and many of those who have accumulated modest fortunes, and you will find that they have either consciously or unconsciously employed the mastermind principle. Great power can be accumulated through no other principle. What? So Napoleon Hill is saying that great power can be accumulated through no other principle. Remember, in the first page on chapter 10, in the mastermind, like, obviously we just got into the section of what is the mastermind, but in the first page he was talking about power, and he defined power as organized and intelligently directed knowledge. And now he is saying that great power can be accumulated through no other principle. So there's a difference between strength and power that I've been realizing throughout my experience. And we got all the strength. We've been through some hard experiences, some of them almost incomprehensible. And I may truly never understand what experience you have been through. However, getting over those experiences, you have all this strength, right? All this stuff. Like, you can get over it. But power is different. What is power? That stuff's different, because I noticed a lot of people also take the word power in the wrong way. They think of power as these like these dictators kind of taking over the world. They have all this power, all this control. However, Napoleon Hill is looking at it as a way of where you and me can truly accumulate this thing called power and absolutely use it to our advantage, even though we're not dictators, we're just normal people. All right, I'm gonna get back to the book. That was just a tangent. Energy is nature's universal set of building blocks, out of which she constructs every material thing in the universe, including man and every form of animal and vegetable life. Through a process which only nature completely understands, she translates energy into matter. Nature's building blocks are available to man in the energy involved in thinking. Man's brain may be compared to an electric battery. It absorbs energy from the ether, which permeates every atom of matter and fills the entire universe. It is a well known fact that a group of electric batteries will provide more energy than a single battery. It is also a well known fact that an individual battery will provide energy in proportion to the number and capacity of cells it contains. The brain functions in a similar fashion. This accounts for the fact that some brains are more efficient than others and leads to this significant statement. A group of brains, coordinated or connected in a spirit of harmony, will provide more thought energy than a single brain, just as a group of electric batteries will provide more energy than a single battery. Through this metaphor, it becomes immediately obvious that the mastermind principle holds the secret of the power wielded by men who surround themselves with other men of brains. There follows now another statement which will lead still nearer to an understanding of the psychic phase of the mastermind principle. When a group of individual brains are coordinated and function in harmony, the increased energy created through that alliance becomes available to every individual brain in the group. Okay, so I'm going to repeat it. This is something that I want to understand. So Napoleon Hill says when a group of individual brains are coordinated and function in harmony, the increased energy created through that alliance becomes available to every individual brain in that group. Okay, let's just put it in an example, I guess. So I'm thinking, let's say you got a mastermind going, it's two people, you create that third mastermind, and you guys are in harmony, and there's just this absolute ball. I don't even know how to call it because it's going to sound so wild. Um, man. Okay, I'm gonna keep reading, but I wonder. Let me ask you guys if this is hitting you differently when Napoleon Hill says when a group of individual brains are coordinated and function in harmony, the increased energy created through that alliance becomes available to every individual brain in the group. What does that mean to you? I guess I'll say it like that because what I'm thinking of, if I put it into words, yeah. Okay. It is a well known fact that Henry Ford began his business career under the handicap of poverty, illiteracy, and ignorance. It is an equally well known fact that within the inconceivably short period of 10 years, Mr. Ford mastered these three handicaps, and that within 25 years, he made himself one of the richest men in America. Connect with this fact the additional knowledge that Mr. Ford's most rapid strides became noticeable from the time he became a personal friend of Thomas A. Edison, and you will begin to understand what the influence of one mind upon another can accomplish. Go a step further and consider the fact that Mr. Ford's most astounding achievements began from the time he formed the acquaintances of Harvey Firestone, John Burroughs, and Luther Burbank, each a man of great brain capacity. And you will have a further evidence that power may be produced through friendly alliance of minds. There is little, if any, doubt that Henry Ford is one of the best informed men in the business and industrial world. The question of his wealth needs no discussion. Analyze Mr. Ford's intimate personal friends, some of whom had already been mentioned, and you will be prepared to understand the following statement. Men take on the nature and the habits and the power of thought with those with whom they associate in a spirit of sympathy and harmony. I'll repeat that again. Men take on the nature and the habits and the power of thought of those whom they associate in a spirit of sympathy and harmony. What is Napoleon Hill saying here in that last line? He's saying that who you surround yourself around, you become. Not sure. I've heard this plenty of times. I'm sure you guys have that saying where it's like the five people you surround yourself with most is who you ultimately are. Like, show me your friends, and I can show you your income level, right? That saying. So that's where I guess that comes from when Napoleon Hill says that men take on the nature and the habits and the power of thought of those whom they associate in a spirit of sympathy and harmony. So just know that whoever you're with, I'm not saying anyone that you surround yourself with is bad, but I am saying that Napoleon Hill is saying that you're going to take on the habits of those who you surround yourself with most. So just keep that in mind anytime someone comes into your little world that you're if they're influencing your life and they're like someone that you surround yourself with closely, just pay attention to their habits because soon enough those will become your habits. Henry Ford whipped poverty, illiteracy, and ignorance by allying himself with great minds, whose vibrations of thought he absorbed into his own mind. Through his association with Edison, Burbank, Burroughs, and Firestone, Mr. Ford added to his own brain power the sum and substance of the intelligence, experience, knowledge, and spiritual forces of these four men. Moreover, he appropriated and made use of the mastermind principle through the methods of procedure described in this book. This principle is available to you. We have already mentioned Mahatma Gandhi, who perhaps the majority of those we've already mentioned Mahatma Gandhi. The majority of those who have heard of Gandhi look upon him as merely an eccentric little man who goes around without formal wear and apparel and makes trouble for the British government. In reality, Gandhi is not eccentric, but he is the most powerful man now living. And this is estimated by the number of his followers and their faith in their leader. Moreover, he is probably the most powerful man who has ever lived. His power is passive, but it is real. Keep in mind that even though this is a chapter on the mastermind, throughout this chapter we keep talking about power. So keep in mind, what does power mean to you, and what does that look like to you? Let us study the method by which he attained his stupendous power. It may be explained in a few words. He came by power through inducing over 200 million people to coordinate with mind and body in a spirit of harmony for a definite purpose. In brief, Gandhi had accomplished a miracle, for it is a miracle when 200 million people can be induced, not forced, to cooperate in a spirit of harmony for a limitless time. If you doubt that this is a miracle, try to induce any two people to cooperate in a spirit of harmony for any length of time. Every man who manages a business knows what a difficult matter it is to get employees to work together in a spirit even remotely resembling harmony. The list of the chief sources of which power may be attained is, as you have seen, headed by infinite intelligence. When two or more people coordinate in a spirit of harmony and work towards a definite objective, they place themselves in position through that alliance to absorb power directly from the great universal storehouse of infinite intelligence. I'm going to repeat that sentence because I think that's key. When two or more people coordinate in a spirit of harmony and work towards a definite objective, they place themselves in position through that alliance to absorb power directly from the great universal storehouse of infinite intelligence. This is the greatest of all sources of power. It is the source to which the genius turns. It is the source to which every great leader turns, whether he may be conscious of the fact or not. Okay, what does that mean to you guys? I'd love to find that out. To me, so like, let's say you got a mastermind, you're working towards a definite major purpose. Is he saying that through this alliance, you have the power? You are able to absorb power directly from the great universal storehouse of infinite intelligence? Hmm. This gets pretty deep. We're talking to infinite intelligence here and actually absorbing the power of infinite intelligence, which you guys know is like what? That's okay. So now, on a non-religious standpoint, this is getting pretty deep right now. I'm gonna keep reading. I have a lot to think about. And I want you guys to be thinking about this too, because this is getting deep. So near the end of this philosophy, we're gonna get into some deep stuff. And when I first read this book, I almost didn't believe it. That's why I don't suggest you read this book once. I suggest you read it at least 3 times before then you decide whether you're gonna keep reading it or not. And then with a little bit of push, I think you will decide that, "Oh, okay, this is a book I gotta study for the rest of my life." Because keep in mind, I mentioned it in a few previous episodes, but I I had a mentor of mine who I just found on YouTube. I never met him in person. I saw him in person once when I went to London, but I met a mentor who has been studying this book for 60 years, and he has made millions and millions of dollars, and he kept preaching this book, preaching this book, preaching this book. And then going back to author, Napoleon Hill spent 25 years of his life reaching out to 500 of the world's wealthiest individuals and created this philosophy from them. Imagine going 25 years of your life without getting any pay for a single idea that that didn't pay him fortunes right away. All I gotta say is this book is some powerful stuff. I'm gonna keep reading. We're almost done. We have 4 more pages to go, so let's get through it. The other two major sources from which the knowledge necessary for the accumulation of power may be obtained are no more reliable than the 5 senses of man. The senses are not always reliable. Infinite intelligence does not err. In subsequent chapters, the methods by which infinite intelligence may be most readily contacted will be adequately described. This is not a course on religion. No fundamental principle described in this book should be interpreted as being intended to interfere either directly or indirectly with any man's religious habits. Thank you for saying that, because we were talking about infinite intelligence and God, and I was getting nervous. This book has been confined exclusively to instructing the reader how to transmute the definite purpose of desire for money into its monetary equivalent. Read, think, and meditate as you read. Soon the entire subject will unfold, and you will see it in perspective. You are now seeing the detail of the individual chapters. Money is as shy and as elusive as the old time maiden. It must be wooed and won by methods not unlike those used by a determined lover in pursuit of the girl of his choice. And, coincidental as it is, the power used in the wooing of money is not greatly different from that used in wooing of a maiden. That power, when successfully used in the pursuit of money, must be mixed with faith. It must be mixed with desire. It must be mixed with persistence. It must be applied through a plan, and that plan must be set into action. When money comes in quantities known as the big money, it flows to one who accumulates it as easily as water flows downhill. There exists a great unseen stream of power which may be compared to a river, except that one side flows in one direction, carrying all who get into that side of the stream onward and upward to wealth. And the other side flows in the opposite direction, carrying all who are fortunate enough to get into it and not able to extricate themselves from it downward to misery and poverty. Here's a visual for you. Basically, Napoleon Hill is saying there's a river. On one half of the river, you're swimming upstream, you're going with the flow, and you're basically, you ever notice some people get rich and they just like get like so damn rich. You're like, how did you get so rich? Like it's like they got rich and it just kept accumulating. So they found the big money. And the big money flows to the one who accumulates it as easily as water flows downhill. Keep in mind this river. Napoleon Hill is relating a river flowing to this great unseen stream of power. But he's saying that this river of this power that's flowing like a river. Imagine a river, but instead of water in it, it's just freaking power. The One side flows in one direction, carrying all who get into it on that side of the stream onward and upward to wealth. However, the other side flows in the opposite direction, carrying all who are fortunate enough to get into it and not able to extricate themselves from it downward to misery and poverty. So I will say, from just reading a ton of books, a lot of authors will tell me that 98% of people are actually on this river that's going down to poverty and misery. However, there's like 2% of people that are actually on their way to the big money, to the big riches. And truthfully, the reason I'm reading this book is because I want to understand this, because I want to be on the side of the river where the big money is, not flowing down to poverty and misery with everyone else. Every man who has accumulated a great fortune has recognized the existence of this stream of life. It consists of one's thinking process. The positive emotions of thought form the side of the stream which carries one to fortune. The negative emotions form the side which carries one down to poverty. Okay, so just know that this river of power has everything to do with your thoughts. The positive emotions of thought form the side of the stream which carries one to a fortune, while the negative emotions of thought will carry you down to poverty and misery. This carries a thought of stupendous importance to the person who is following this book with the object of accumulating a fortune. If you are on if you are in the side of the stream of power which leads to poverty, this this video or this book may serve as an oar by which you may propel yourself over into the other side of the stream. It can serve you only through application and use. Merely reading and passing judgment on it, either one way or another, will in no way be a benefit to you. Okay, I'm gonna just go back. We're almost done the book, but or done this chapter. But keep in mind that even though I've read this page over and over and over again, I wasn't really getting anywhere with this power. And Napoleon Hill says that merely reading and passing judgment on it, either one way or another, will in no way be benefit to you. It can only serve you through application and use. So if you're not applying, if I'm not applying these principles in this book, then just reading this is truly just a waste of time. Um, I'm not saying it's a waste of time for me reading this out loud right now, because I'm definitely understanding this to another level. But if I'm just reading it and if I do nothing about it, then I am technically just wasting my time, because this will be no benefit to me. Some people undergo the experience of alternating between the positive and the negative sides of the stream, being at times on the positive side and at times on the negative side. The Wall Street crash of 1929 swept millions of people from the positive to the negative side of the stream. These millions are struggling, some of them in desperation and fear, to get back to the positive side of the stream. This book was written especially for those millions. Poverty and riches often change places. The crash taught the world this truth. Although the world will not long remember the lesson, poverty may, and generally does, voluntarily take the place of riches. When riches take the place of poverty, the change is usually brought about through well conceived and carefully executed plans. Poverty needs no plan, it needs no one to aid it because it is bold and ruthless. Riches are shy and timid, they have to be attracted. Okay, last thing on the chapter. Anybody can wish for riches, and most people do, but only a few know that a definite plan plus a burning desire for wealth are the only dependable means of accumulating wealth. And that is the end of chapter 10. All right. Wow. Um wow. I will say that chapter on power, for some reason, I've read a lot of the other chapters over and over again, but I never gave much attention to the chapter on power. That that was possibly one of the greatest chapters I've ever read. Just thinking like the fact that like, because like I'm reading it live to you guys right now, so it's hitting me differently. but that definitely made me think in a certain way. Okay, so yeah, so questions for you guys that are watching this video, that are either live right now or watching the replay. What's one thing you learned and one thing you liked from the chapter on power or the mastermind principle? And what's one thing that you would like to apply from this chapter? For me, I understand from this chapter, especially that one line, that just merely reading this ain't going to do anything. I actually do need to start utilizing my mastermind in a better form of harmony. Um, Furthermore, it's exciting to know that even though, so I'm only 22 years old. I'm still young. I'm not what I'm not a millionaire yet, but I want to be. That's why I'm reading this. And where was I going with this? This chapter definitely on power, man. Power is such an interesting word. So what does power mean to you? And what is the definition of power? It was said. I said it multiple times, pretty straightforward to you. Did you catch the definition of power? Because I really want you to be thinking about that. Um, what's the definition of power? I'll just say it. Power is intelligently and organized knowledge directed towards a specific means. That may not be the perfect wording that he said it, but it's along those lines. So, yeah, well, I'm gonna be thinking about this chapter all day. We're at 40, almost 42 minutes with the live. As long as it's under an hour, we're good. Yeah, so I'm definitely glad we're getting into some juicy stuff right now. So keep in mind that with this book, every one of these principles underlines one another. You notice how even in this chapter on power, Napoleon Hill mentioned desire, definite purpose, persistence, and faith. He mentioned all those words in this chapter on power. They're all factors to be linked together with this whole philosophy. And just keep in mind that if you truly want to understand this philosophy, if I truly want to understand this philosophy, I have to apply all 13 principles of it. And that's when the big riches, as Napoleon Hill says, will come. Okay, cool. So that's my final thoughts on chapter 10, power, or the mastermind principle. I want to thank you guys for watching. I'll see you Facebook. Have a great day, everybody. And YouTube, I guess my new exit in lingo is until we meet again in time and space. I'll see you guys on Michael Music, and bye for now.